Welcome to Zoe Stories. Woke up with a girl's body, thanks to the Feminizing Serum. The city was quiet that night, the hum of distant traffic barely reaching my apartment window. Streetlights cast long, soft shadows across my small living room, and the faint glow reflected off the glass coffee table made the place feel both cozy and dangerous. I had the whole night to myself. Normally, I would have spent it binge-watching something mindless or scrolling through my phone. But tonight was different. Tonight, I wanted more. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the small vial in my hand. Feminizing Serum, it read, bold and glossy, promising a full transformation overnight. My fingers traced the smooth glass, the liquid inside shimmering slightly, like it knew exactly what it was about to do. I should have laughed at the ridiculousness of it. A serum that could turn a guy like me into a girl? Impossible. And yet, curiosity and something darker, something thrilling, made me hesitate. By day, I'm Alex. Just another guy trying to survive the monotony of office life. Emails, deadlines, awkward coffee machine small talk. Nothing extraordinary. But by night, my secret life began. Cross-dressing. A hobby, a passion, an escape, I didn't even know anymore. It was my alone time, a world where I could be exactly who I wanted without judgment. I'd tried small things before, sneaking into dresses, trying makeup, experimenting with wigs. But I'd never imagined what it would be like to truly wake up as someone else. And then there was Isabella. My girlfriend. The one person I trusted more than anyone. She's beautiful, confident, a force of nature that turns every head when she enters a room. We've been together for 2 years, and she knows parts of me no one else does, but even she doesn't know the extent of my obsession. To her, I'm just Alex. Reliable. Predictable. Slightly nerdy. Safe. And I like it that way. Some secrets, they're not ready to be shared. I remembered the moment I'd discovered the serum online, hidden on some sketchy site, promising a night of full transformation. Most people would scroll past. But I didn't. The apartment was empty. Isabella was away on her weekend trip, leaving me with the perfect opportunity. My pulse quickened as I imagined waking up tomorrow, different. A version of myself I'd only ever dreamed about in whispers to my own reflection. I poured the liquid into a small glass, watching it shimmer. My hand shook slightly as I brought it to my lips. One gulp. That was all it would take. My heart raced, a mix of fear and anticipation. What if it worked? What if it didn't? What if it worked too well? The taste was oddly sweet, almost medicinal, sending warmth from my throat down through my chest. I felt my muscles relax, my eyelids growing heavy. Sleep came quickly, a deep, untroubled slumber that carried me away from the mundane world and into something unknown. And then I woke. The first thing I noticed was my hair, long, soft, impossibly silky. My hands flew to my face, fingers tracing unfamiliar curves. My chest, my body, everything had changed. The mirror across the room reflected a stranger with my eyes, my expression, but nothing else. Soft cheekbones, slender neck, narrow shoulders, hips that curved in ways I'd only dreamed of. Panic surged, but beneath it, a pulse of excitement. Forbidden, reckless, intoxicating excitement. I needed to see more. I stumbled to my wardrobe, heart pounding in my chest. Dresses, skirts, blouses, all waiting for moments like this. My fingers brushed the fabric, feeling it anew, imagining how it would feel against this transformed body. I chose a soft pastel dress, one I had never dared wear for anyone, not even myself. Pulling it on, I felt the fabric hug curves I didn't know I had. The sensation was electric, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. Then came the heels. Simple, elegant, a little wobble as I learned to balance on them. Every step I took was a discovery, a reminder of how fragile and strange this new form was. I barely recognized myself. Makeup was next. My hands trembled as I applied foundation, mascara, and lip color. Every stroke reinforced the impossible reality staring back at me. By the time I was done, the reflection was no longer just a woman, it was me, in a way I had never dared to imagine. But fear lingered. What if it was permanent? What if Isabella came back early? What if someone discovered this secret? My mind raced, every possibility twisting into anxiety. And yet, a part of me didn't want to hide. A part of me, deep and reckless, wanted to explore this new self fully, even if it meant walking the knife's edge of danger. Standing there, in the quiet shadows of my apartment, I realized one thing: my life had changed forever. One night, one reckless decision, and everything I knew about myself was gone. And I wasn't ready for what came next. The night air was thick with fog, curling around the edges of the secluded cabin where I had been instructed to stay after taking the serum. The wooden walls creaked under the weight of the wind outside, and the faint rustle of trees brushing against the roof made my pulse jump. I wasn't in my familiar world anymore. There were no streetlights, no hum of traffic, only the darkness pressing in, heavy and suffocating, as if it knew exactly what had happened to me. I sat on the edge of the narrow bed, hands pressed to my thighs, feeling the new contours beneath my fingers. My body was unrecognizable. Curves replaced the angles I had always known. Softness and warmth pooled everywhere my fingers touched. My hair, long and silky, fell past my shoulders in waves I had never experienced before. I swallowed hard. This wasn't just a transformation, it was a complete rewriting of me. The serum's warmth still lingered in my veins, an electric hum that made every nerve ending buzz. Panic and exhilaration fought for dominance in my chest. I wanted to scream, run, hide, but a forbidden thrill anchored me in place. I had wanted this, hadn't I? I had fantasized about feeling every inch of myself anew. And now, in this strange, shadowed cabin, I was living it. The faint glow of a single lantern cast flickering shadows across the walls, and I caught my reflection in the small mirror propped on the dresser. The face staring back at me was familiar yet alien. High cheekbones, delicate jawline, soft lips, I barely recognized myself. My eyes, though, still carried the same disbelief and curiosity, the same pulse of excitement. I rose from the bed, feeling the sway of my hips, the subtle bounce of my chest, every motion foreign and yet intimately mine. The dress I had hastily packed, soft, pale blue silk, slid over my new body with a perfect fit. The fabric clung to every curve, highlighting things I had never dared to notice before. I stepped into a pair of heels I had tucked into my bag. The first few steps were unsteady, the wooden floor groaning slightly beneath me, and a shiver ran down my spine. The cabin felt alive, almost predatory. Shadows moved with the flickering light. Every floorboard, every rustle outside, felt like a warning. I whispered to myself, testing the tone of my voice in this new form. It was softer, higher, almost melodic. Hearing it, I shivered, not just from the cold, but from the raw, intoxicating reality of who I had become. I moved carefully toward the small window, peering out into the dark forest surrounding the cabin. Mist clung to the trees like ghosts, twisting and turning in the lantern light. I imagined anyone stumbling across the cabin, neighbors, hikers, even Isabella, seeing me like this. My chest tightened. What would they think? Would they laugh, scream, or simply stare? The thought made my pulse hammer, yet fueled an undeniable thrill. Every movement reminded me that I was exposed, vulnerable, yet fully alive. I traced the curves of my waist, letting my hands glide down to my hips, my chest, the delicate lines of my arms. My breath hitched as the realization sank in. I was inhabiting a body I had only dared to dream about. Every sensation was amplified, the silk of the dress, the weight of the heels, the unfamiliar sway of my hips. I was acutely aware of everything. I sank to the edge of the bed again, curling slightly, letting the dress drape over my legs. My reflection in the tiny mirror seemed to study me now, almost judging me, almost daring me to embrace this new self. I touched my face, my hair, my lips, exploring what was mine and what felt borrowed. I could feel the serum still humming in my system, urging me to move, to explore, to accept the change fully. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here in the fog-wrapped cabin. I practiced walking from the bed to the dresser, adjusting my balance, learning the subtleties of posture, testing how the dress moved with me. Every motion was a mix of caution and excitement, fear and longing. I whispered to myself again, testing my voice, my tone, imagining Isabella's reaction if she were here. The thought made my heart hammer, and a shiver ran down my spine. By the time the lantern burned low, casting long, dancing shadows across the cabin walls, I realized that I had crossed a threshold. This wasn't just a temporary change. I could feel something inside me shifting, awakening. Fear, thrill, exhilaration, they all tangled together, and I knew that what had begun here in this isolated cabin was only the start. The serum had done more than change my body, it had rewritten my reality. And I wasn't ready for what came next. The fog outside thickened, curling around the cabin like silent fingers, and I felt it pressing in closer with every heartbeat. I moved toward the small dresser, the heels making soft clicks on the worn wooden floor. My reflection stared back from the tiny mirror, and for the first time, I tried to imagine myself beyond curiosity, truly accepting this new form. Every step was a revelation. My legs, once familiar and unremarkable, now swayed differently, carrying weight I had never known. I experimented, shifting my hips, feeling the silk dress glide across soft curves. My chest rose and fell, light but undeniably present. I ran my hands along it, shivering at the sensation. A thrill surged through me, part fear, part lustful curiosity, part sheer disbelief. I sat at the edge of the bed, the lantern casting flickering shadows across my body. The cabin felt like it had contracted, walls pressing closer, silence thick enough to choke on. I couldn't stop staring at my reflection in the mirror on the opposite wall. The woman who looked back at me was both alien and familiar, and the duality twisted my stomach. I whispered my own name, testing the soft lilt of my voice. Alex, or whoever I am now, I murmured, heart-hammering. Movement was no longer just functional, it had become a game, a careful dance. I stood, let the dress fall around my legs, and practiced walking across the room, imagining each step drawing someone's eyes, though the cabin was empty. My fingers traced the contours of my face, hair cascading through my hands, and I realized with a shiver that this body was mine to mold, explore, and dare to be. Yet fear was never far. The isolation that once seemed liberating now felt suffocating. What if the serum didn't wear off? What if I was trapped like this, in this unfamiliar form, alone in the fog-wrapped wilderness? Every creak, every groan of the old wooden cabin, sounded like a warning. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. The wind rattled the shutters, a branch scraped against the roof, and I flinched. My pulse raced. Still, temptation overpowered terror. I approached the small desk in the corner, its surface cluttered with the remnants of what must have been some prior experiment, vials, notebooks, and a half-empty candle. I traced the lines of the serum's instructions printed on a crumpled page, reading each word aloud to hear it in this new voice. It sounded different, lighter, yet carried a weight of finality. I was no longer merely experimenting. I had crossed a line into something permanent, or dangerously close. The heels shifted beneath me as I turned, nearly tipping over. I caught myself on the edge of the bed, laughing softly at my own clumsiness. The sound startled me, echoing through the empty room, reminding me of just how exposed I was. I touched the silky fabric of the dress, feeling it brush against every curve, and a flush rose to my cheeks. My body reacted with a life of its own, responding to touches, movements, and the thrill of solitude in ways I had never anticipated. I drifted back toward the mirror, studying every angle. My reflection was almost hypnotic, mesmerizing. I leaned closer, brushing my lips with the tip of my fingers, imagining the sensation of another's touch. A shiver ran down my spine. The serum hadn't just changed my body, it had awakened a raw, desperate awareness, a hunger to explore, to feel, to inhabit this new self fully. Shadows danced as the lantern flickered, and I caught myself imagining Isabella walking through the cabin door. My chest tightened. Panic and excitement collided, a dizzying mix that left me breathless. How would she react? Would she understand, laugh, or recoil? My heartbeat thundered in my ears at the thought. Even the possibility of being discovered, alone in the fog and shadows, was intoxicating. I sank back onto the bed, curling into myself, dress pooling around my legs. My hands roamed, memorizing every curve, every soft slope. My mind raced with questions I didn't have answers for. What was this new identity? Temporary or permanent? Could I ever go back? And yet, beneath the fear, there was an undeniable thrill, a rush of power and vulnerability I had never known. Hours slipped past unmeasured. I practiced movements, posture, gestures, even the subtle ways my new voice shifted when I spoke aloud. The fog outside thickened, muting the world beyond, making the cabin a small universe of shadows, silk, and whispered desires. Every moment heightened the suspense, every reflection, every sway of my body, every creak of the wooden floor reminded me that I was alone, but dangerously aware of who I had become. By the time the candle burned low, I realized I was teetering on the edge of something irreversible. The serum had done more than change me, it had unlocked a part of myself that had been hidden, dormant, yearning for exploration. And in the dim glow of the lantern, in the fog-enshrouded cabin, I understood one terrifying truth: the night was far from over, and the journey into this new self had only just begun. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing, thick and suffocating, turning the cabin into an island cut off from the world. I paced the creaky wooden floor, testing every movement in this new body. The sway of my hips, the weight of my chest, even the delicate arch of my back, everything felt amplified, hypersensitive, as if the serum had rewired my senses. I stopped at the dresser, hands trembling as I picked up a compact mirror. The reflection staring back at me was both mesmerizing and terrifying. My face, soft and unfamiliar, framed by long waves of hair, seemed to belong to someone else entirely. Yet every glance reminded me, this was me. My name was still Alex, but the essence of me had shifted irrevocably. I traced the outline of my lips, soft and plump under my fingertips, and felt a shiver that had nothing to do with the cold. The sensation was foreign, exhilarating, and frightening. The heels I had learned to walk in only hours ago now gave me a strange confidence, a rhythm to my movements that felt almost predatory. Each click echoed in the silent cabin, a reminder that I was alone, but exposed. Curiosity overpowered caution. I decided to explore further, testing gestures, postures, and even my voice. I spoke softly to the empty room, letting the melodic lilt of my new tone fill the space. Alex, or whatever I've become, I whispered. The words hung in the foggy air, tremulous and fragile, carrying a weight I hadn't anticipated. Every step across the cabin felt like a performance. I spun slowly, letting the silky dress flutter, feeling it cling and flow over unfamiliar curves. The fabric pressed against my waist, hips, chest, teasing every nerve ending. I closed my eyes and let myself imagine someone, Isabella, or anyone, watching me. My heart raced. Exposure, even in imagination, was intoxicating. The fear of discovery only heightened the thrill. I sank onto the edge of the bed, letting the dress pool around me. My hands roamed over my body, memorizing every curve, every new slope. The serum had not just changed my appearance, it had awakened a hyper-awareness, a heightened sensitivity to touch, movement, and even sound. The whisper of the wind through the cracks in the cabin walls, the subtle creak of the floorboards, even the soft thud of my own heartbeat, all of it felt magnified, part of this new reality I inhabited. I tested the boundaries of my transformation. Leaning forward, I brushed a strand of hair over my shoulder, feeling the silk of the dress slide against my thighs. I shifted my weight, letting my chest rise and fall naturally, marveling at the soft elasticity beneath my hands. A gasp escaped me, involuntary, a mixture of shock, fascination, and something darker, something I didn't fully understand yet. The shadows in the cabin seemed to move with me, lengthening and twisting as the lantern flickered. Every reflection caught in the small mirror fragments became a study in duality, the Alex I had always known, and the new self, delicate yet alive, bold yet vulnerable. I reached up, touching my face again, feeling the curve of my jaw, the softness of my cheeks. Each touch was a revelation, a confirmation that this was no longer an illusion. I rose slowly, testing my balance in the heels again. My movements felt instinctive, yet careful, as if the cabin itself were watching, judging, waiting for me to falter. The fog outside pressed against the glass, muffling the world, making the silence almost unbearable. I whispered again, testing my voice with longer phrases, letting it roll off my tongue, letting it inhabit this body fully. The sound was seductive, strange, utterly unlike anything I had ever heard from myself. Then a sudden creak made me freeze. My pulse spiked. The cabin was empty, or at least I told myself it was, but my mind raced with possibilities. A branch scraping against the roof? A wild animal? Or something else? The fear was electric, intoxicating, a rush that mingled with the thrill of inhabiting this new form. I pressed my palms against the dresser, grounding myself, trying to steady my breath. Hours, or maybe moments, passed in a blur of movement, reflection, and whispered explorations. I practiced crossing my legs, leaning forward, sitting with grace, testing every motion that might betray me or reveal me to someone else. The dress, the heels, the silk of my hair, they all became tools of transformation, amplifying both my vulnerability and my newfound power. By the time the candle burned low, casting long, flickering shadows across the cabin, I felt a dangerous exhilaration. The serum had done more than change my body, it had opened a door into something uncharted, thrilling, and terrifying. I was no longer merely Alex. I was something new, something fragile and dangerous, and the night stretched ahead, full of possibilities, risks, and secrets I hadn't yet dared to explore. The fog outside had thickened into a nearly impenetrable wall, muting the sounds of the world beyond the cabin. Yet something felt off. A snapping branch, too deliberate to be random, made my heart seize. I froze mid-step, heels balanced uncomfortably on the floor, dress clinging to my body. Every nerve screamed that I wasn't alone, though I told myself it was just the wind. I moved toward the window, peering through the condensation-streaked glass. Shapes shifted in the mist, trees swaying with an almost unnatural rhythm. My breath hitched. Was it just my imagination, or had someone, or something, approached the cabin? I stepped back, heart hammering, hands trembling as I pressed against my chest. The serum's effects made my senses hyper-alert. Every sound was magnified, the faint rustle of leaves, the subtle creak of the roof, even the soft thump of my own pulse. My body reacted instinctively, hips swaying, chest rising and falling, alert yet poised, every movement amplified in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. I sank onto the edge of the bed, wrapping my arms around myself, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. The transformation had left me more vulnerable than I had anticipated. Every curve, every sway of my hips, made me feel exposed. Yet, paradoxically, I also felt powerful. This body could allure, distract, and deceive. A shiver of excitement ran down my spine as I imagined the consequences of being seen like this. The wind outside shifted suddenly, rattling the shutters. My heart jumped. I pressed my palms to my thighs, grounding myself, listening. Then I heard it, the faintest footstep crunching on gravel outside. My breath caught. Someone, or something, was moving toward the cabin. Panic mingled with the serum-induced thrill. My body felt alive in a way it never had, every nerve buzzing with adrenaline and fear. I glanced at the mirror on the dresser. The reflection was mesmerizing. The woman who stared back at me, Alex, yet not, was beautiful, delicate, and hyper-aware. Every curve, every line of this new body, radiated tension and allure. I ran my fingers along my jaw, tracing the delicate slope of my cheek. My lips parted slightly. The thought that someone might see me in this form made my pulse thunder. The footsteps grew closer, crunching over gravel, deliberate and slow. I ducked behind the bed, pressing my body against the mattress, dress pooling around me. My heels made soft tapping noises against the floor, a cruel reminder that I was both exposed and unprepared. I held my breath, heart hammering, listening as the mysterious visitor, or intruder, moved around the cabin. I couldn't see anything from my hiding spot, but the tension was almost unbearable. Every creak of the floorboards, every sway of the cabin in the wind, made me flinch. I imagined Isabella walking in unexpectedly. Or maybe a stranger, someone discovering my secret, my transformed body, the serum, the dress, the heels. Panic and thrill collided in my chest, making it impossible to think clearly. Then, a shadow appeared at the window, briefly silhouetted against the fog. My breath caught. The figure paused, as if studying the cabin. My body tensed, every nerve alert. Should I run? Should I hide further? The serum made me hyper-aware, yet also strangely daring. My fingers trembled as I reached for a strand of hair, tucking it behind my ear. I was terrified, but a part of me wanted to be seen. The figure moved again, stepping back into the fog. Relief washed over me, mixed with a lingering pulse of excitement. I sank to the floor, heels off, dress brushing the wooden boards. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye again, and I realized that the serum had changed more than my body. It had awakened a hunger for sensation, danger, and discovery. I stood slowly, testing my balance again, moving toward the small dresser to prepare for whatever might come. Every movement was cautious yet deliberate, hips swaying, chest rising and falling, voice soft and melodic as I whispered to myself. "Alex, or whoever I've become," I murmured. The words trembled with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Outside, the fog pressed closer, sounds muted but persistent. I knew the night wasn't over. The cabin, isolated and shadowed, was no longer a sanctuary, it was a stage. And I, transformed, vulnerable, and aware of every sensation, was the central act in a drama I could not predict. The fog outside had thickened into an almost tangible wall, pressing against the cabin as if the world itself wanted to test me. My pulse raced, heels clicking softly against the worn floorboards, silk of the dress clinging to every curve. I was no longer merely a guest in my own body, I was an intruder, a stranger exploring forbidden territory. I approached the mirror again, lingering over the unfamiliar face staring back. Every movement was a revelation, the tilt of my chin, the curve of my neck, the delicate arch of my brows. My fingers traced along my cheeks, lips, and collarbone, each touch sending shivers through me. The serum had heightened everything, sensation, awareness, even desire. I could feel myself trembling, not just from fear, but from the raw thrill of inhabiting this body fully. The isolated cabin, once a place of refuge, now felt like a trap. Every creak of the wooden floor, every rattle of the shutters, felt amplified. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision, almost sentient, stretching toward me as if they wanted to pull me into the night. I pressed my palms to my chest, trying to steady my racing heartbeat, but the serum made it impossible to ignore how alive I felt, hyper-aware of every nerve, every curve, every sway of the dress against my body. I moved toward the small desk in the corner, scanning the cluttered surfaces, vials, crumpled notes, and half-burned candles. One vial, small and glimmering, caught my eye. Trembling, I picked it up, feeling the weight of potential, of risk, of the unknown. The serum had promised transformation, and it had delivered, but the curiosity, the temptation, was far from satisfied. I traced the vial with my finger, imagining the power it held, the irreversible change it could unleash if I dared to experiment further. A sudden sound outside, a branch snapping sharply against the cabin, made me flinch. My breath caught, and I pressed myself against the dresser for cover, dress pulling around my legs. The heels I had grown accustomed to hours ago suddenly felt cumbersome, every movement a loud, deliberate announcement of my presence. My mind raced with possibilities. Was someone out there? A neighbor? A hiker? Or worse? Isabella? I sank to the floor, curling slightly, letting the silk dress brush over my legs. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye again, and I was struck by the duality of my existence. The face, the body, it was mine. Yet everything about it was foreign, thrilling, and terrifying. I whispered to myself, testing the sound of my voice, letting it roll through the empty cabin, "Alex. Alex, who have you become?" The words trembled with a mixture of fear and wonder. Hours, or perhaps minutes, passed in a dizzying blur. I moved from the bed to the window, testing balance in the heels, letting the dress sway with each step. The fog pressed closer outside, muffling the world, turning every sound into a potential threat. My hands roamed over my body again, memorizing every curve, testing the sensations the serum had amplified. The thrill of exposure, even in imagination, was intoxicating. I paused, gazing through the fog-laden window. Shadows shifted, shapes appeared briefly, and my pulse spiked. I imagined someone catching sight of me, the shock, the judgment, the curiosity. A tremor ran through me, not just fear, but an undeniable exhilaration. The serum had done more than change my body, it had awakened something primal, a hunger to explore, to feel, to push boundaries. I spun slowly in the center of the cabin, letting the dress flutter around me, hips swaying, chest rising and falling with each breath. Every reflection, every flicker of shadow, heightened the suspense. I whispered again, testing my voice, imagining reactions, weighing the thrill of discovery against the terror of being caught. The cabin, the fog, the darkness, they had become both my playground and my prison. By the time the lantern flickered low, casting long shadows across the wooden walls, I realized the serum had done more than alter my appearance. It had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. Fear, desire, vulnerability, and exhilaration all tangled together, making me acutely aware of the precarious balance I now inhabited. The night was far from over. Somewhere beyond the fog, beyond the trees, beyond the isolation, consequences waited. I could feel it in the tense sway of my hips, the heightened sensitivity of my skin, the rapid beat of my heart. Every sound, every shadow, every reflection was a test. And I, trembling yet aware, was ready, or at least, as ready as I could ever be, for whatever came next. The fog outside had turned the forest into a wall of shadows, each tree a towering sentinel, each rustle a threat. I paced the cabin floor, heels tapping softly but urgently, the silk of my dress clinging to every curve, every new contour of my body. My pulse raced, not just from fear, but from the dizzying thrill of inhabiting this altered form. Then it happened, a sharp knock on the cabin door. My breath caught in my throat, and my heart thudded violently. Someone knew I was here. Or maybe it was curiosity, or fate. I froze, the serum humming through my veins, making every nerve sing. I had imagined this before, Isabella walking in, discovering me, but now it was real, and every instinct screamed to hide, to vanish, to become invisible. I pressed myself against the wall, the dress slipping slightly with the motion, chest rising and falling as panic and exhilaration tangled together. Shadows from the flickering lantern danced across the floor, turning the small room into a stage for suspense. Every sound of footsteps on gravel outside, the creak of the cabin, my own trembling heartbeat, was amplified, as if the world were holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. The knock came again, louder, insistent. My mind raced. Should I answer? Hide? The serum had altered more than my body, it had heightened my awareness, sharpened my fear, and amplified the thrill of danger. Every movement I made now felt like a performance, each gesture a test. I crept toward the bed, the silk of the dress brushing against my legs, heels clicking lightly against the floor. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, and I barely recognized the woman, or Alex, I had become. The curves, the softness, the delicate face, all of it was mine, yet entirely alien. I whispered my own name, tasting the sound of it in my new voice, Alex, or whatever I am now. Another knock. This time, the doorknob rattled. Someone was trying to get in. My heart nearly stopped. I backed toward the dresser, hiding behind it, imagining Isabella, or worse, a stranger, discovering me like this. The serum's effects made me hyper-aware of every sensation, the sway of my hips, the weight of my chest, the shiver down my spine, every flicker of the lantern light on my skin. I was exposed, vulnerable, and intoxicatingly alive. I had to think. Slow my breathing. Calm the storm inside. Yet every instinct screamed for action, for movement, for something to distract from the mounting panic. My hands drifted over the dress, over my body, tracing the curves, memorizing the new contours. Fear, exhilaration, and desire mingled into a single, overwhelming rush. The doorknob rattled again. I took a deep breath, every muscle tense. Whoever was outside could walk in at any moment. The thought made me both terrified and strangely eager. I had spent hours exploring this body, learning its curves and movements, reveling in the strange power and vulnerability it gave me. Now, the real test had arrived. The lantern flickered and nearly went out, plunging the room into half-shadow. I pressed myself flat against the dresser, dress pulling, heels at an awkward angle, eyes locked on the door. A voice, low, tentative, called out. "Alex, is that you?" My chest constricted. It was her. Isabella. The fear was instant, suffocating. I wanted to disappear, to revert to my old self, to undo everything. But the serum had made that impossible. My body, my voice, my reflection, all were irrevocably changed. I could feel the silk of the dress cling to my skin, the delicate arch of my back, every curve accentuated and visible. I was alive in a way I had never imagined, and terrified in equal measure. I took a step backward, swaying in the heels, and almost tipped. The dresser groaned under my weight. Isabella's voice came again, closer this time. "Alex? Are you in there?" "I know you're in there." Panic surged, but so did an unexpected thrill. The serum had heightened every sense, and the knowledge that someone might see me like this sent a jolt through my body. I whispered to myself, trying to steady the storm inside. "It's just the night, just the serum, just me." But the words were hollow, empty against the pounding of my heart and the click of heels on the wooden floor. Every shadow seemed to twist toward me, every sound amplified into potential danger. And then, silence. A breathless pause, as if the world were holding its breath. My pulse thundered. Every muscle tensed. I could feel the serum's warmth humming through me, urging me to move, to explore, to take risks. Fear and desire collided, creating a storm of sensations I had never experienced. I knew then that nothing would ever be the same. The serum had transformed more than my body, it had changed my reality, my awareness, my entire existence. And as I pressed myself against the dresser, dress clinging, heels teetering, I realized the night had only just begun. The shadows, the fog, the fear, and the thrill were all part of a test I had no choice but to face. The door creaked open slowly, and my pulse nearly stopped. Isabella's silhouette appeared, outlined by the fog that pressed against the cabin walls. My heels clicked nervously as I shifted behind the dresser, every curve of my body tense, every nerve screaming. The serum made me acutely aware of the silk of the dress, the sway of my hips, the gentle rise and fall of my chest. I was both exposed and alive, every sensation magnified. "Alex?" Her voice was soft, but edged with suspicion. "I heard noises. Are you here?" My throat went dry. I wanted to speak, to explain, to deny everything, but the voice that came out was unfamiliar, melodic, impossibly soft. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, and I flinched. This wasn't me, or rather it was, but transformed beyond recognition. I stepped out slowly, careful not to trip over the dress pulling at my ankles. Each movement was a careful negotiation between fear and thrill, my body swaying naturally yet cautiously in the heels. Isabella froze for a moment, eyes widening as she took in the transformation. My heart hammered. Every curve, every detail, every line of my altered body was on display, and the serum made me hyper-aware of the effect. Is that really you?" she whispered, stepping closer, fog curling around her like fingers trying to touch me. I nodded, voice trembling. "It's me." The words felt strange, foreign, carrying a weight that pressed against the small room. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, until her gaze fell to the dress, the heels, the silk sliding across my skin. Her lips parted slightly, a mixture of shock, curiosity, and something I couldn't immediately identify. Was it all confusion? Something else entirely? My body responded instinctively, every nerve alive, every movement accentuated by the serum. I took a tentative step closer, testing the distance between us, feeling the subtle shift of the dress and the sway of my hips. You look different," she said softly, voice trembling. I swallowed hard, hyper-aware of every inch of space between us. The serum had heightened not only my physical sensations but also my emotional responses. Fear and excitement collided, creating a storm that left me dizzy and trembling. I didn't mean for this to happen," I admitted, voice soft, almost pleading. The serum, it changed me. My hands trembled as they drifted to my hair, smoothing the waves, adjusting the dress. Every subtle movement seemed amplified in the silence of the cabin, every shift of my hips, every breath, a declaration of vulnerability and power at once. She stepped closer, hesitant, eyes scanning every line of my transformed body. The fog outside seemed to press closer, isolating us in a bubble of tension and suspense. My heart raced, body alive in a way it never had before. The serum had amplified everything: sensation, awareness, vulnerability, desire. What am I supposed to do?" she whispered, voice breaking slightly. I could feel the silk of the dress brush against my thighs as I shifted my weight, swaying instinctively, every movement a test of balance and nerve. I glanced at the mirror, catching the reflection of the two of us, the Alex I had been, and the Alex I had become, and Isabella, caught between disbelief and curiosity. The tension was unbearable. Every second stretched, thick with anticipation and fear. I could feel her eyes on me, tracing every curve, every line, every sway. My body responded instinctively, heightened by the serum, the thrill of exposure mixing with panic. The room felt impossibly small, the fog outside pressing in, shadows dancing across walls. I don't know," I admitted again, stepping slightly closer, voice trembling. "I didn't plan this, but it's me now." Every word carried weight, the serum making me hyper-aware of the emotional and physical stakes. The dress clung to me, the heels accentuated my posture, and the silk brushed my skin with every subtle movement. She reached out hesitantly, fingertips grazing my arm. A shiver ran through me, not entirely from fear. The serum made every touch electric, and I felt exposed yet alive, vulnerable yet thrillingly powerful. Our eyes met in the mirror's reflection, the tension thick and suffocating, a mix of fear, curiosity, and unspoken desire. The cabin seemed to shrink around us. The fog outside pressed closer, the lantern flickered, and every creak of the floorboards sounded like a warning. I was caught between panic and exhilaration, between the Alex I had known and the woman, or version of myself, I had become. Isabella's gaze lingered, searching, questioning, and I realized that nothing would ever be the same. Then, a sudden noise from outside, a branch snapping sharply, made us both startle. The cabin door rattled slightly, a reminder that the world beyond the fog was still watching, still threatening, still unknown. I pressed my back against the dresser, feeling the silk of the dress against my skin, hips shifting instinctively, every nerve alive with anticipation. Isabella stepped closer, voice barely audible. "Alex, or whoever you are, what happens now?" I swallowed, every muscle tense, every sensation heightened by the serum. I don't know," I admitted again, voice breaking slightly. "But I need you to understand, this is me, now." The silence stretched between us, heavy and electric, every second a test of fear, trust, and desire. The fog pressed closer outside, the cabin seemed to shrink, and every sensation, every curve, every movement was amplified into a storm of suspense and emotion. The serum had changed everything, and now, facing Isabella, the stakes had never been higher. The tension in the cabin was nearly unbearable. Isabella's eyes never left me, tracing every curve, every movement, every subtle shift in my posture. My body was alive with heightened sensation, silk brushing skin, heels pressing into the wooden floor, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. I could feel the serum pulsing through me, amplifying every fear, every thrill, every whisper of desire and panic. Then, a loud crash from outside. Something hit the side of the cabin with force, splintering a small branch and rattling the wall. Isabella gasped, stepping back slightly, while I froze mid-step, heels teetering, dress pulling around my legs. My pulse spiked. Whoever, or whatever, was out there had just crossed a line. The fog outside pressed against the windows like a living thing, shadows twisting unnaturally in the flickering lantern light. I wanted to run, to hide, but the serum had made me hyper-aware, hyper-alert. My body reacted instinctively, hips swaying, chest rising and falling, hands pressing against my cheeks to calm the trembling. Every nerve was alive, every sensation magnified. I glanced at the mirror, my reflection staring back at me, and then Isabella's eyes reflecting in it, wide with shock, curiosity, and something else I couldn't name. Another crash, closer this time. A shadow darted across the fog outside, moving quickly, silently. My stomach churned. My mind raced. This wasn't just about being discovered by Isabella anymore. Someone, or something, was testing the cabin, testing me. The serum made me feel every heartbeat, every nerve ending, every shiver as if it were amplified 100 times. Isabella took a hesitant step forward. "Alex, we need to—" Her words were cut off as the cabin door shuddered violently from the impact of something banging against it. Panic surged. I pressed myself against the dresser, heels slipping slightly on the wooden floor, dress pulling around me like a protective barrier. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet fear and exhilaration intertwined so tightly that I felt frozen, alive, and exposed all at once. My reflection caught in the mirror again, showing the delicate, transformed figure I had become. The serum had reshaped me completely, my curves, my voice, my movements, and now every moment of exposure was a test of courage and control. My fingers traced the silk of the dress, memorizing the sensation, grounding myself in the only familiar thing left, my transformed body. The banging grew louder, more urgent. My chest constricted. I could feel the serum's effects coursing through me, making my senses razor-sharp. Every sound outside, every shadow in the fog, every creak in the floor felt like a threat, an unknown variable I had no control over. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice as I whispered, "It's okay. Just stay calm." But my own words sounded foreign, delicate, fragile, like they belonged to someone else entirely. Isabella's hand brushed against my arm, hesitant but grounding. I trembled under her touch, a mixture of fear and the serum-fueled awareness of every inch of contact. "What do we do?" she asked, voice barely audible. I glanced toward the door, toward the looming shadows beyond the windows. "We have to be careful," I murmured, heart racing. It doesn't know what's inside." Suddenly, the door shook violently again. Splinters fell to the floor, and a shadow loomed against the fog outside, dark and indistinct. My breath caught. I wanted to move, to run, to escape, but every step was calculated, measured. The serum had sharpened my awareness, made my movements instinctive, yet exposed. My body swayed with tension, every curve visible, every shift of weight noticeable in the dim lantern light. Another knock, harder, louder, insistent. The cabin groaned under the impact. I pressed myself flat against the dresser, holding my breath, feeling every nerve tingling, every sensation amplified. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, transformed, vulnerable, and alive. I whispered softly to myself, grounding in the only thing I could, my body, my senses, my new identity. The banging stopped suddenly, leaving only the sound of the wind pressing against the cabin. My pulse thundered in my ears. Isabella exhaled slowly, relief mingling with fear. I dared a small glance toward the window. The fog had swallowed the shadow, but the sense of being watched lingered, heavy and oppressive. Every nerve in my body remained alert, hips shifting slightly, chest rising and falling with every breath. I realized then that the serum had done more than change my appearance, it had rewired my perception, made every second, every shadow, every breath a heightened experience. Fear, desire, vulnerability, and exhilaration collided in a storm I could neither predict nor control. The night stretched ahead, full of unknowns, tests, and risks, and I was caught in the eye of a storm I hadn't asked to enter, yet could not escape. The cabin trembled under the wind's fury, shadows flickering like living things against the wooden walls. I pressed my back against the dresser, heels teetering, dress clinging to every curve. Isabella stood frozen, eyes wide, every breath shallow. The door creaked and rattled again, a violent thud echoing through the small space. Whoever, or whatever, was outside was testing our limits. Panic surged, yet the serum pulsed through my veins, heightening every sense. I could feel the silk brush against my thighs, the subtle arch of my back, the sway of my hips with each tiny movement. I don't know what to do," Isabella whispered, stepping closer, voice trembling. Her hand hovered near mine, hesitant, seeking reassurance I barely had myself. I swallowed hard, hyper-aware of every sensation, every sound. We have to stay calm," I murmured, trying to anchor myself. Yet the serum made the simple act of standing a challenge, each movement a blend of fear, desire, and heightened awareness. Suddenly, a loud crash rattled the cabin door, making the walls shake. My heart leapt, and I stumbled slightly, heels scraping the floor. A splintered piece of wood fell near my foot. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye. I saw the transformed version of myself, curves accentuated, chest rising with every breath, eyes wide with panic and adrenaline. Every sensation was magnified, the silk against skin, the trembling of my fingers, the rapid beat of my heart. "We have to block it," Isabella exclaimed, panic sharpening her voice. She grabbed a chair, dragging it toward the door. My body reacted instinctively, hips swaying, arms reaching to help, every movement amplified by the serum. The thrill of action mingled with fear. My hands trembled as we wedged the chair against the door, trying to keep the shadowy intruder at bay. Another thud echoed outside. I pressed myself closer to the dresser, dress pulling around me, feeling both exposed and powerful. The serum had heightened every sense, and I could feel the danger in the air, the fear of exposure, the exhilaration of being fully seen in this new form. My reflection in the mirror showed a woman alive with tension, curves shimmering under the lantern light, every movement deliberate, every nerve electrified. Then a sudden sound, a window sliding open slightly, fog curling inside like smoke. My pulse thundered. I stepped back instinctively, heels slipping slightly, dress brushing the floor. Isabella gasped. I could feel the serum intensifying my awareness, every nerve alive. The threat was no longer just outside the door, it was creeping in, shadows reaching toward us, reality bending into suspense. I can't, I started, voice trembling, but the serum made every word melodic, amplified. Every movement of my body became a declaration of vulnerability and daring, a test of control I wasn't sure I had. My hand grazed the mirror, catching the reflection of both of us, caught between fear and exhilaration, shadows and light. A sudden scream, loud, piercing, from outside made us both jump. The cabin door rattled violently again. I pressed myself flat against the dresser, hips swaying instinctively, chest heaving, silk of the dress clinging, every nerve alive. My mind raced, every scenario, every possible reaction, yet nothing prepared me for what would happen next. Isabella reached for me, voice breaking. "Alex, what is happening?" Her gaze darted between the door, the window, and me. I trembled, aware of every curve, every subtle sway of my body, every delicate sound amplified by the serum. I don't know," I whispered, unable to fully grasp the chaos. The serum had made me hyper-aware of everything, the danger, the thrill, the exposure, but it had also made my control fragile, every movement a risk. Another crash, closer, louder. The cabin shook, lanterns flickering, shadows dancing wildly across the walls. I stumbled slightly, heels scraping, dress slipping a fraction, and for a terrifying moment, I thought the intruder might see me in this vulnerable, transformed state. Panic surged, yet with it, a strange exhilaration. The serum had made me alive in a way I hadn't known possible. Isabella grabbed my hand, anchoring me. "We have to do something." Her grip was firm, yet trembling. I nodded, breath ragged, feeling the silk of the dress against my skin, hips shifting, chest rising with adrenaline and fear. Every second stretched, heavy with suspense, danger, and heightened awareness. The shadows outside seemed to pulse, the fog pressing closer, and the cabin felt impossibly small. I glanced at the mirror, my reflection, hyper-aware, fully transformed, alive, and terrified, met Isabella's eyes. Every sense screamed that the night had reached its peak, that the serum, the transformation, and the danger had all collided into a moment that would define everything to come. And then, silence. The door had stopped shaking, the fog seemed to hold its breath, and the world beyond the cabin pressed in, waiting. My heart pounded in my chest, every nerve alive, every movement deliberate. I knew the danger was far from over, that the serum had changed me irreversibly, that Isabella had seen me in a way that could never be undone. The cabin was silent now, but the tension was unbearable. Every shadow seemed to pulse, fog curling against the windows like fingers seeking to pull us into the unknown. My heels scraped against the floor as I shifted, dress clinging to every curve, chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. Isabella stood beside me, her hand trembling as it rested lightly on my arm, anchoring me in a world that felt unreal. Then, a whisper of movement. Outside, beyond the fog, I sensed it, someone, or something, shifting. My pulse spiked. The serum had made me hyper-aware, and every nerve screamed in alarm. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye. I barely recognized the delicate, transformed version of myself staring back. Every sway of my hips, every curve, every flutter of silk seemed amplified, alive with danger. The doorknob rattled, violently this time. I froze, heels teetering, dress brushing the floor, palms sweaty. Isabella's eyes widened, fear etched into her features. "It's coming in," she whispered. I could only nod, aware that nothing could undo what had happened, the transformation, the serum, the exposure. My body, fully alive in this new form, responded instinctively, hips shifting, chest rising and falling with the adrenaline flooding through me. A loud crash echoed as the door splintered slightly under impact. The intruder, or whatever it was forcing entry. Panic surged, but so did a strange, serum-fueled thrill. I realized, in that suspended second, that I had never felt more alive, more exposed, more aware of every sensation, every vulnerability, every curve that now defined me. Isabella grabbed my hand, voice trembling. "Alex, what do we do?" I swallowed hard, hyper-aware of her gaze, every subtle movement, every delicate touch magnified by the serum. We have to keep moving," I whispered, voice soft, trembling. My heels clicked as I stepped back, swaying slightly, dress fluttering around my legs. Every movement was deliberate, every sensation heightened. Another shadow shifted outside, closer, a figure barely visible through the fog. My chest tightened, and I pressed my back against the dresser, fingers brushing the silk of the dress, grounding myself in the only thing I could control, my transformed body. The serum had made every nerve electric. Fear, desire, vulnerability, and exhilaration collided in a storm I could neither escape nor fully comprehend. Then the twist, the window suddenly swung open, and a hand reached in, grabbing the curtain. The lantern flickered violently, throwing long shadows across the room. I stumbled slightly, heels slipping, dress pulling, and Isabella let out a startled gasp. My heart raced. Whoever, or whatever, was out there had breached our perimeter. I felt the serum's effects coursing through me, heightening every movement. Instinctively, I shifted, letting the silk brush over my legs, hips swaying, body fully alive in a way I had never known. The thrill of exposure mingled with panic. Every breath, every heartbeat, every glance in the mirror reflected a version of me that was both vulnerable and powerful, terrified and exhilarated. The figure outside froze, silhouetted in the fog. My reflection caught the movement, and I realized they weren't human. The serum, the transformation, the night, the fog, it had created a reality suspended between fear and fantasy. My mind raced, heart pounding, but my body moved with precision, every step a negotiation between terror and survival. Isabella's grip tightened on my arm. "Alex, what is that?" Her voice trembled. I swallowed hard, voice soft, melodic. I don't know, but we have to." A sudden thud against the cabin wall interrupted me. The shadow surged closer, fog spilling into the room. Panic and thrill collided in a storm that made my knees wobble. I pressed myself flat against the dresser, hips swaying, chest rising and falling, dress clinging to every contour, every curve. The serum had made me acutely aware of every sensation, every heartbeat, every subtle shift in the room. Fear, exhilaration, and raw awareness tangled together, and I realized that I had never felt more alive, or more exposed. The shadow loomed, fog swirling around it, and I knew I could not hide. Every instinct, every nerve, every movement amplified by the serum screamed that exposure was inevitable. Yet, a thrill ran through me. I was fully inhabiting this body, every curve, every sway, every touch heightened, every second a test of control and courage. And then, silence. The shadow stopped, fog pressing against the windows. My pulse thundered, body trembling, dress slipping slightly, heels precarious. Isabella looked at me, wide-eyed, and I realized that the serum, the transformation, the danger, and the thrill had reached their peak. A final flicker of the lantern caught the mirror, and I saw it, my reflection, transformed, alive, and terrified, facing a threat I could not yet name. Every nerve screamed, every curve reflected, every heartbeat a countdown. The night had brought change, exposure, and suspense beyond imagination. And in that moment, with fog pressing in and shadows shifting, I understood one truth: nothing would ever be the same. The serum had transformed me, the night had tested me, and the suspense was far from over. Whatever happened next, I was caught, fully alive, fully aware, and completely changed. The cabin was cloaked in an uneasy silence, fog pressing against the windows like living fingers. My heels teetered on the worn wooden floor, dress clinging to every curve, silk sliding against my skin in the dim lantern light. Every nerve in my body screamed, heightened by the serum that had transformed me. I could feel the delicate arch of my back, the sway of my hips, and the rapid rise and fall of my chest as I drew shallow breaths. Isabella stood beside me, hand lightly resting on my arm, anchoring me in the fragile reality we shared. Her eyes were wide with shock and awe, tracing every line of my transformed body, every subtle movement. I swallowed hard, voice trembling yet melodic. It's me, I whispered, barely recognizing the words in my new voice. Then, the sound. A soft, deliberate step outside the cabin. Fog shifted, shadow gliding across the broken windowpane. My pulse thundered, and I pressed my back against the dresser, dress pooling around my legs, heels precarious. The serum had heightened every sensation: fear, thrill, vulnerability, and a dizzying sense of power all collided in a storm that left me trembling and alive. Isabella's grip tightened slightly. "Alex, we can't stay here," she murmured, voice trembling. I nodded, fully aware that every movement could betray us, every sound could invite discovery. My body reacted instinctively, hips swaying, chest rising, fingers brushing the silk of the dress, grounding myself in the only thing I could control. Another step. Closer. Slow, deliberate. I could feel it in my bones, every hair on my arms standing on end. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, a transformed, vulnerable, yet undeniably alive figure staring back at me. I pressed a hand to the mirror, almost as if seeking reassurance, but it only reflected the tension, the fear, and the thrill that had become my reality. Suddenly, the cabin door rattled violently again. I stumbled slightly in my heels, dress slipping fractionally. Isabella gasped. I whispered softly, "Stay calm, we can." A loud crash interrupted me. The shadow had reached the cabin. Panic surged, yet so did a strange exhilaration. The serum had made me alive in a way I had never experienced, every nerve electric, every sensation magnified. I took a step back, heels clicking sharply against the floor, silk brushing my legs. Isabella grabbed my hand. What do we do?" Her voice trembled. I shook my head, realizing that nothing I could do now would undo what had happened. "We wait," I whispered, voice fragile, melodic. "We see what happens next." A hand appeared at the broken windowpane, thin, dark, almost ethereal. The fog swirled, obscuring its form, and I realized we were no longer just hiding from a threat, we were trapped in suspense, suspended between fear and revelation. My body responded instinctively, swaying slightly, every curve visible, every subtle movement a testament to the serum's power. The shadow outside shifted again, indistinct, almost human, almost something else entirely. I pressed my back against the dresser, dress sliding slightly, heels threatening to tip. Isabella clung to my arm, eyes wide, searching mine for guidance I barely possessed myself. The serum had made me acutely aware of every heartbeat, every breath, every brush of silk against skin. Vulnerable and alive, exposed and electrified. Then, the whisper, a voice, soft, deliberate, almost familiar. "Alex, or whatever you've become," my heart leapt. The serum had amplified my awareness, and every sound now felt like a threat, a revelation, a test. The fog pressed closer, shadows danced, and the unknown loomed. I realized in that suspended second, nothing could be undone. My body, transformed, heightened, alive in every curve and contour, was fully exposed to the world beyond the cabin. Every heartbeat, every shiver, every trembling step was a countdown to discovery. And yet, a strange thrill surged, fear and exhilaration entwined, making me more aware, more alive, more dangerously vulnerable than I had ever been. Another step outside. The shadow pressed against the window, fog swirling around it like smoke. My reflection in the mirror stared back at me, wide-eyed, vulnerable, alive, fully transformed. I pressed my hand to the mirror, fingers trembling, dress clinging, heels teetering. "Alex, what now?" Isabella whispered, voice breaking. I swallowed, heart racing, awareness heightened to a point of overload. "We wait," I murmured, breath trembling. "We see what it wants." The fog shifted again, curling through the broken windowpane, shadows pressing closer. The cabin groaned under the weight of the night. Every nerve screamed in alarm and exhilaration. My transformed body, every curve, every sway, every delicate line, was fully exposed, fully alive, and fully at the mercy of the unknown outside. And then, silence. The pause was heavier than sound, thick with anticipation, with suspense, with the unknown. Outside, the shadow waited. Inside, I trembled in heels and silk, every nerve alive. Isabella's hand pressed against mine, fragile and grounding. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, a transformed figure staring back at a world that had changed irreversibly. The serum had altered more than my body, it had altered reality itself. And as I stood there, trembling, exposed, alive, I understood, the night was far from over. The shadow was still out there, the fog pressing closer, and whatever was coming next could change everything. And in that suspended moment, with heels precarious, silk clinging, and every nerve electric, the story froze, a perfect cliffhanger. Would we survive the night? Would Isabella understand? Would the world ever see me the same way again? The answer remained unknown, suspended in the fog, in the shadows, in the transformed reflection staring back at me.